He does a little programming with some friends of his to match websites and usernames with usernames and passwords, and he finds his mark. Edith and Max Rosso. Max is so typical. Max runs a plumbing and an HVAC and plumbing business in Plattsburgh, New York, about as rural as it gets. And through a series of family connections, he signed up a big customer named Bullseye Stores. That big customer is opening stores all over Canada, needs someone that speaks French. He's the perfect guy for the job. But Max hates technology. He's got a business full of Windows XP computers that are 10 years old and barely functional, and his wife uses one. She gets an email one day that claims to come from her wireless carrier that says, click on this attachment to update your password. She clicks the attachment and nothing apparently happens. But down inside her computer, a whole lot happens. She ends up with a key logging program on her computer, and now everything she types goes to a server in Russia where Ivan and his buddies analyze it, and they recover a login password to Bullseye Stores. And now they're in. And yeah, same century, different century, same snake oil. There's a high-tech twist to it, there's an international twist to it, but there's no real difference. There's no, hey Iggy, there's no difference to the ones who sold snake oil before. It's a modern 21st century snake oil. By the way, I found this artist, I found Morgan Wessling. I just found a random image on the internet. It's the best snake oil image I could find. So I used this image with permission. We traded some emails back and forth. He said, yes, Greg, you can use this for this one purpose, and if I ever have an identity theft problem, I'll call you. And I said, that's great, works for me. And that was how, in our fiction story, that was how a 10-year-old, obsolete, barely functional computer triggered a series of events that shook the whole world. And this story, the politically correct thing to say on the internet, if any resemblance to any characters, both living or dead, is purely coincidental, and that's true. But the story and the actions and how one computer triggered a series of events that changed the whole world, that's right out of the headlines. The names and dates, the names are different. I go to all these places, we're not doing national security here, we don't have any secrets anybody cares about. You're probably right. You're probably right. Nobody wants to steal your checking account. The thing I have the most trouble convincing people about is, you're not the mark. You're not the game. You're part of the path to somebody else. Nobody wants to steal your secrets. They want to use you to help steal somebody else's secrets. You don't want to be part of that. Talk to a plumbing company in upstate Pennsylvania that was part of the real world target breach. Ask him how good that was for business. And I don't think you'll be surprised at the answer. Anyway, Ivan's found his victim. Now it's time to probe deeper. So he does that. He probes deeper into the network. What's the IP address layout? What are the key systems? What are the passwords? So he does all this probing, and after a whole bunch of high-tech attacks that don't work real well, he figures out a way to do some social engineering, and he gets the people inside Bullseye Stores to tell him what he wants without knowing that they told him what he wants. This is the part where I insert a picture of Robert Redford in The Sting. Remember the movie The Sting? I had a great picture, but it wasn't, the resolution wasn't good enough, so we just have to do it with characters. That's what happens. That picture I showed you with the snake oil, that's what's going on the internet today. People are still people. So that's fiction. In the real world, just like in regular industry, we have a whole value chain, and we have a supply channel. We have specialists we can call on. The bad guys have all that stuff too. I stumbled across this one day. This is Lampedusa.so or Rescator.cc. This guy Rescator, a lot of the guys in the underground world worship this clown. This guy's in Turkey, but a lot of people worship him. He's the guy that they suspect of stealing a lot of credit cards. So he runs this website, he runs this underground forum. Some of it's in Russian that I can read the letters, but I don't know what the words say anymore. And some of it's in English. So this one in English, I'm looking for someone who can give me POS access and working as a team on a long-term project, and I can provide you my parts. Do you think that bad guys don't collaborate? Do you think bad guys are lonely guys that sit in a little room all by themselves? Well, you're wrong. They might sit in a room all by themselves, but they collaborate online, right here and on other websites like that. You're not up against one person. You're up against a whole industry of people. And don't ever forget that. The days of the lonely teenager hacking away because they can do it, those days ended 10 years ago. Here's what a spam email. This is called a phishing attack. Phishing, P-H-I-S-H, phishing. I have no idea where that word came from, but when somebody's phishing, that means they're trying to convince you into doing something stupid. Typically, you'll get an email that claims to come from your bank or an email that claims to come from your boss that says, please wire $1 million to this Cayman Islands bank account. So this one is claiming to tell me that there's a package coming for me, and all I have to do is click on this zip file attachment, and it'll tell me everything I need to know. Yeah, right. You're going to have to get up a little earlier in the morning for that. So there's a few things you could look at, and I've got another whole presentation I put together this morning for how to decode some of this stuff. But there's what's wrong with this email besides the little teeny tiny print up there that you can't see. Well, the dates are wrong for one thing. And never open a zip file. There's so many bugs with the zip file presenter. Never open a zip file that somebody sends you. Never. The copyright dates are wrong. 2014 is long gone, yet the copyright is 2014. So whoever did this was sloppy with there. And looking at the header, it came from a compromised computer somewhere in Newark, New Jersey. Somebody in Newark, New Jersey wants to tell me that I have a package waiting for me and click on this zip file. That seems like a Bahir Mustafa thing, right? You want to hear the block of shame? Here are, just so you don't think I'm out of my mind and off my rocker, well, I am a little bit, but here's a few real-world attacks. Everyone's heard of the Sony Pictures attack, right? Yeah, everybody. Okay. The camera's pointing. This time everybody really did raise their hands. So Seth Rogen and the other movie stars at Sony Picture, they do a movie, and this is the stupidest movie ever invented ever. So that they're gonna go to Korea, they're gonna assassinate Kim Jong-il of Korea. I mean, what a stupid.
It was funny.
Sorry, but it just was. And now the Koreans, the North Koreans get mad, and they attack Sony Pictures, and now we have to do a whole freedom of speech thing, and we have to defend our whole corporate infrastructure over a stupid movie about assassinating a world leader in a rogue country with a nutcase running the country. Part of me says Sony deserved what they got, part of me says they didn't deserve what they got, but they should have done a lot better job of protecting themselves. They conned somebody into giving them a password, they got inside the network, they downloaded all the data they could download, and then they ran a program that wiped all the computers. 30-some thousand computers, bam, all wiped. Sony went back to the Stone Age for a couple of days. But you think Sony's a victim, right? Poor Sony, they're a victim, they've been penetrated. Well, they were, but this was an earlier event. So Sony BMG, Sony Basic something or other music group, 2005. If you bought a music CD from Sony and you put that music CD in your computer, they owned you. Sony owned you. They introduced a rootkit into the computer. Every time you played a CD, you sent information back to Sony about what CD you were playing and what music you were listening to. They did that so that they claimed they did that so they could fight fraud. But if you listen to some of the quotes from some of the Sony execs from the emails that went back and forth, they didn't have any respect for you as a Sony customer. They paid millions in a class action lawsuit for that. And Mark Russinovich found that, a computer journalist. Mark Russinovich uncovered that problem. There's been a few great articles written. I pointed to some of them in the slide here. Sony doesn't have their hands clean. This one I just have to shake my head at this one. I'm sure, I would bet you a donut that there's somebody at the top of TJ Maxx that said, we sell clothes, we don't want to do tough stuff with tech toys. So, a crook sits out in the parking lot at a shopping mall, opens up a laptop, gloms onto the wireless inside TJ Maxx. Now he's inside their whole corporate network. Guess what he does? He downloads a few million credit cards into his laptop and he sells them on the internet. My jaw drops. I don't have words to describe how that could be. This is basic stuff. Experian. So Experian is one of the big credit reporting companies. If you go to do a mortgage or you go to buy a car, Experian is one of those companies that will give you your credit score. It turns out Experian sold our personal data to some fraud places. There's a whole big long story about it, but it ended up that they did that for more than a year, and the payments came from Singapore, wire transfers from Singapore. Now you're Experian, you're selling your business is this data. You're selling it to somebody, and they're paying you with a wire transfer from Singapore, and you don't do anything about it. If anybody from Experian sees this on the internet, I'm sorry if you're mad at me, but you should be in jail for that. There's just no other. You should add that. All right, I'll go on. Target, our hometown company, Target. I know a little bit more about. I know a few more details about this one than I do about the others because it's been in the press a lot. In the real world Target breach, there's a plumbing, an HVAC company in Pennsylvania, and somehow a computer got compromised at this HVAC company in Pennsylvania. They logged into Target to get invoices paid. So the bad guys had a username and password inside Target. They used those credentials to probe the Target network for several months. They introduced malicious software in a few internal Target servers, and they figured out a way to pollute every single Target point-of-sale system in the United States. 20-some thousand point-of-sale systems. Go to Target, buy something at Target, and a few hours later the Russians have your credit card number. Bam, just like that. Now, I've dumped on the HVAC company, on Fazio Mechanical. I've dumped on them, but Target's hands are not clean either. Target, why does an external payment company have access to the whole entire Target corporate network? I've wanted to ask that question so many times, but there's nobody who will answer. I've looked, believe me, I've looked. And after spending all these millions of dollars on security inside Target, why did they ignore the warnings? They spent millions of dollars on software. The software told them about all the weird network traffic, and they didn't do anything about it. That's another wall of shame. But this one's even worse. Home Depot. So Home Depot lost 56 million credit cards. Similar profile to what happened to Target. One new twist on Home Depot. Home Depot hired a chief security engineer. This guy's job was to engineer how their security worked. Home Depot didn't do their homework. That chief security engineer was himself a bad guy. The job that he had before, he got fired and he sabotaged all the servers at the job where he had before. This guy's in jail today. That was their chief security engineer. It gets worse. These are infrastructure companies you've probably never heard of. Komodo is a certificate authority. When you visit a website, we all trust that website really isn't that website. How does that work? Everybody's supposed to trust certificate authorities. These guys are the ones that know everything there is to know about all the details for how the encryption works. They're supposed to be the ones that are crystal clean. They're not. Komodo's been hacked. VeriSign's been hacked. There's a bunch of other CAs, security authorities, that have reported breaches. And GoDaddy's a domain registrar. They've been hit. They've been hit in different ways. So the companies that are supposed to protect us on the internet are themselves victims, except sometimes they are themselves perpetrators as well when they do blackmail on domain names, but that's different. And then this is the big kahuna. The United States National Security Agency, that's the group in charge of keeping our national secrets. That's keeping us safe from all the bad guys out there on the internet. These are the guys that think about encryption all day long. If you think I'm a propeller head, these guys are the propeller heads. And except there's private industry people that are just as smart as they are. Well, the National Security Agency is itself a victim and is itself a perpetrator. They spy on us, and they have also been spied on, and they've been caught with their hands in the cookie jar. This is where it gets personal. Way back in the mid-90s, I found myself involved with an embezzlement case, a really juicy one. Yeah, no, I'm not going to name names. The point of all that is, it took the FBI 5 years to go after that case. 5 years. 5 years. It was millions of dollars. It took the FBI 5 years to go after it with a big company. 5 years. And they, that's not bad. That's not, November 2000, I'm a do-it-yourselfer with IT stuff, so I ran a name server myself. And that name server got polluted. And I talked to some friends of mine who said, Brad, you gotta call the FBI. You gotta call them, because if they come find you and find out that you did this, they'll come after you. Turned out that someone had compromised one of my servers, and I was part of an attack against the sovereign government of the country of Brazil. I don't think the government of Brazil cared about my little 144 KB DSL connection, but that scared me half to death, and I wasn't, this is part of why I'm not so scared anymore. So I called the FBI, and I got a hold of a lady, and I tried to explain to her what the internet was, and there's a whole big long conversation. When I got done, she said, long pause on the phone, and she says, You don't tell some, the internet's a whole bunch of computers, they're all interconnected with each other. Whoever did this could be across the street or across the world, I don't know how. She says, A long pause, and she said, well, somebody will call you back shortly. Of course nobody called me back, and I called back later that afternoon, and no one had any record that I called, of course. So 3 months, I wrote all this down, and it ended up in a magazine column, and 3 months later I got a call from the local FBI office with somebody who wanted to troubleshoot. There's more. There's more. Yeah, December 1st, 2011, I needed to buy some parts for a customer, and my credit card got turned down. I chased it down. I spent an hour with a lady named Kim at US Bank, and I gave her credit for this in the book. Look at the dedication page. $14,000 some worth of fraudulent transactions, and US Bank caught all of them, and none of them went through. And they saved, US Bank saved my rear end. I'm a US Bank fan. Shravan, thank you. Yeah, Laura, yeah. So I brought all that to the FBI, and it disappeared into a black hole. Nobody worked it. So based on my personal experience, it's just so tempting to dump on government bureaucracy and stuff, and I won't. But all I'll say is, if you are a victim, you're probably on your own. Don't expect a lot of help from law enforcement. In their defense, I suppose they're overburdened and understaffed. I'll just leave it at that. So then, as I was getting ready for this, I told you about botnets and computers all over the world, and some guy controls these computers all over the world. Somebody tried to attack my book website, and here's the evidence of it. You can see all the IP addresses. Oh, I need a pointer, James. You can see all the IP addresses. They're from all over the world. I chased them down. Oh, don't worry about it. No big deal. No big deal. We can see it. There's about 30 or 40 or 50 different IP addresses. That's just one screen full. This attack went on for something like 15 or 16 hours, and then it just stopped. Somebody was trying to guess the password into my website, no doubt, so they could put evil content on my book website. Wouldn't that be a kick? The book website for a book about security gets hammered. Yeah, that's the ultimate irony, especially after I make fun of everyone else who's been hammered. Well, so my book website didn't get hammered. Nobody guessed my password, and the attack stopped after a little while. Yeah, let's recap. Let's recap a little bit. The bad guys had this whole underground supply chain, and the companies we're supposed to trust have proven themselves not to be trustworthy. At least one major credit reporting agency sold your personal data to a fraud place. Businesses all over the world have been compromised, and no one's going to help you. You're on your own. What do we do about it? Any ideas? What do we do? I have an idea. What do we do about it? Here's what we do. You just buy a cave in Montana. Just isolate yourself from the world. Buy a cave in Montana somewhere. Pay with cash. Don't pay with a credit card. And then, yeah, that's the big starting conclusion of that. The bad guys have unlimited time and unlimited creativity, and you don't. Does that sound like a proper solution? Just go back to the Stone Age? I hear everyone's shaking their head no. So since that's not an option, what else? So, of everything I've told you, you'll hear interviews on the news. You'll hear interviews on 60 Minutes and on popular news stories about how we lack the technological tools to beat the bad guys. They're ahead of us and we don't have the tools. That's a load of hogwash. It's just not true. We have tools. We need diligence. Diligence counts more than anything. If you don't leave here with any other message about anything, just care about this stuff. Care about your identity, care about your data, care about your confidentiality. Care about it, the rest will follow. All the tech tools will follow. And we've got some great tech tools to do auditing and to do isolation. We've got the tech tools. I built some of them and I know how good they are. But you've got to care. And don't count on the government to help you out. Don't count on big business to help you out. Don't count on these big CAs, certificate authorities to help you out because they're not going to. You've got to care. That's a dead horse, beating a dead horse to death. There are some topology things. If you're running a business, put your crown jewels behind another layer of protection. So here's a quick story. I ran into a cigar shop a few years ago. Tina, I had no intention to start smoking cigars, but I got called, and the lady running the shop had her computer was infected by a virus. And Greg, can you come look at this? All right, I'll come look at it. So sure enough, her computer was infected by hundreds of viruses. It was a mess. It turns out she offered Wi-Fi in her store. It was the same Wi-Fi that she used for her own internal store operations. So anybody from the public that had a virus-infected computer, they'd come into the store and that computer would probe for whatever it could find and they'd infect her computer. I told her about it and she didn't want to fix it. It cost too much money. So I said, I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do for you then. I'll clean these viruses out. You're going to have more tomorrow. Care about this stuff. If you're going to run a Wi-Fi network, don't make the public Wi-Fi and your private employee Wi-Fi the same Wi-Fi. Protect it. And if you're going to have point of sale systems, put those in their own private network. If you're keep your antivirus current and up to date, and put the right filtering in place. You can filter outbound email requests so that you can't go to porn sites, or you can't go to some of these evil sites, and you can filter inbound emails and catch a lot of the spam and a lot of the bad stuff. Not all of it, but a lot of it. Automation can do a whole lot for you. Automation is worthless without diligence, but automation can help. Policies in your business, put together a computer use policy, encrypt the stuff that's supposed to be encrypted, especially if you're storing credit cards. I should have put yellow, I should have bolded the last bullet that says, don't be stupid. So, I'm going to pick on Norm Coleman. Norm Coleman, you remember Senator Norm Coleman, the 2008 campaign? The closest Senate election maybe in history ever. It was just a few hundred votes. So the end of the election comes, and Norm's running a PR campaign. He's going to move his website somewhere else to some other host. And then he's going to put out a press release that says, our old host was so overburdened and so busy, we had to move it somewhere else with higher capacity. Maybe that's true, maybe it's not true. But the point is, he left a spreadsheet on his old website, and he left it wide open. And inside that spreadsheet were the names and addresses and credit card data and email addresses for all of his donors. Yeah, did you hear the gasp out there on the internet? You're probably out there gasping yourself. I found out about it in early 2009 with an email from WikiLeaks. The same WikiLeaks that told us that Edward Snowden WikiLeaks to. I found out about it through WikiLeaks. It seems that Norm didn't have enough respect for his own donors to protect their vital information. And a few people did get their credit cards stolen, and a few people did have fraudulent transactions, and it was all over the news in early 2009. Norm came on TV and said, "We have dozens of firewalls to protect that stuff." This is a hint. If a politician tells you that they have dozens of firewalls, plural, you know that they don't know what they're talking about. And you know that they're feeding you a line of baloney. So, I'm sorry, Norm, if this happens to run across you, I don't want you representing me anywhere, because you don't care enough about my information to keep it private, and if you don't care enough about that, then I don't want you representing me. There's my political statement. I hope, educate yourself. I have a friend, well, it's not like I'm not a Star Trek fan, but I have a friend who's like the ultimate Star Trek fan. Graham, this slide's for you when you see it on the internet. Resistance is not futile if you care enough to educate yourself. You don't have to be a victim. I talk to so many people who think it's inevitable that they're going to be victims, and I've talked to some on the phone. You don't have to be a victim. Educate yourself. All right, I've harangued you enough. Here's a few news, just a few tidbits where IT security. How many people think IT security is like the most boring topic in the whole world? I should have asked that first. Raise your hand. My own wife raises her hand.
Your daughter raises her hand too.
Yeah, they probably hear me talk about it too much. Remember the presidential election in 2008? Everybody knows who Sarah Palin is, right? It turns out Sarah Palin had a Yahoo email account, and some clown broke into it and looked at all of her private Yahoo emails. You know how he did it? You forget your password, and it asks you a few key personal questions. So this guy looked on the internet to figure out the answers to her personal questions. He answered them properly, and bam, he's in. He changed her email password, and now he's in. He's impersonating Sarah Palin. And then this idiot bragged about it in a bunch of internet forums, and oh yeah, if you're a politician and somebody goes after you, law enforcement will do something about it. So he's in jail now. At least I don't know if he's still in jail, but he went to jail. This is a tidbit. All those, what's your mother's maiden name, and where was your high school, and what was your first pet's name? There's no law that says you have to tell the truth in those questions. It's just a security answer. It's not a test. So your mother's maiden name was Hoochie Maflachi Mabuchi, and your first pet's name was I don't know, and you went to, and your school was who's on first. Just remember what you answered for those questions, and keep it somewhere private, so that if they look you up on the internet, they can't guess your secret information. I had my half-brother David had his email account penetrated once. And I got this really weird email from him that just couldn't come from David. It was just too bizarre. So I emailed him back, and he emailed me back. And I said, wait a minute, how do I know that you're you? Now, David and I share the same father, different mother. So I said, so David, how do I know that you're you? Tell you what, why don't you tell me our mother's maiden name? Of course, we have different mothers. See, it was a trick question. He replied back and said, that's a good one, Greg. Our father's first name was Doug, and we have different mothers, and thanks for caring. So that was pretty cool. That's how you knew David was David. With all this high-tech stuff all around us, you can still be clever. And you don't have to be a tech whiz to be clever. Just be clever. Stuxnet. Has anybody heard of Stuxnet? Nobody? Wow. Has anybody heard of the deal we made with Iran about the nukes? Just recently? There's some nodding. Stuxnet plays into that. The U.S. government put together a computer virus to attack the country of Iran. This is really true. This really happened. We had spies. We knew the make and model of their centrifuge machines, and we figured out a way to introduce this malware onto the programmable controllers for these centrifuge machines so that they spin really, really, really fast and break the machines. That set their nuclear program back by like 2 years until they made a mistake and the virus got out into the wild. A few 100,000 computers around the Mid-East got infected. And the private antivirus companies found it, they decoded it, they brought in the right experts, and over the course of a few months and a whole lot of homework, the private industry, private antivirus companies, private people decoded all this stuff and found out what was wrong and publicized it. There's a book, there's a whole book about it. It's a fascinating book. So when you see the news stories about how smart the NSA people are, they're not the only smart people. They don't have any monopoly on smarts. And all right, Hillary Clinton's email server. That's in the news. I've read the pieces, and the gist goes something like this. Hillary should have had her email stored in a government email server. She should have used the government for all this. Those are policy questions, and maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong. I have 4 words for the people who tell me that the government email servers are more secure than the private ones. You want to hear the 4 words? Edward Snowden, Bradley Manning. Everybody know who Bradley Manning is? There's some no's. I think his name is Chelsea today. Bradley Manning was an 18-year-old private in the Army serving in Iraq, and he got a hold of a memory stick. And he put a memory stick inside of a computer in Iraq, and he drained a whole bunch of military secrets, and he gave those to WikiLeaks. That's how we know about all these private cables between the U.S. and a bunch of our allies. Because some private in the U.S. Army serving in Iraq, some private with a mental problem serving in the U.S. Army in Iraq did it to us. And then Edward Snowden was a whole lot more sophisticated, and we could go back and forth on whether or not he's a good guy or a bad guy, but when you tell me that the government is secure, I would question whether that's true or not. And then, why is it such a surprise that Hillary Clinton used her own email server? Why are we having an outcry about that right now? Who did we think ClintonEmail.com belonged to all these years? Hillary at ClintonEmail.com. Do a Who Is lookup on it. Everybody's known how to do that for 20 years. But reporters don't do a lot of homework. They just jump on the bandwagon. So take all that stuff with a grain of salt. Here's a few references. If that laptop, oh wait a second, I clicked on the wrong thing. I have no idea what that. Oh, I clicked on the link. Here's a few references. Pretty much anything from KrebsOnSecurity.com. Brian Krebs is a former Washington Post reporter. He reports on this stuff all the time. He's got contacts in Germany, in Russia. He speaks Russian, and he knows these guys. He knows these guys by name. And there's some colorful stories about Brian. In one case, apparently he was coming home. He was inviting his parents over. I think this is how the story goes. He was inviting his parents over, and some bad guys from Russia had convinced the police that there was a hostage situation in the house. So there was a SWAT team, and there was guys with rifles and stuff all around while this